Are boot camp grads getting six-figure FAANG jobs? I'm Chris Dennis. I'm a KMP developer. Tech support says they're coming out Tuesday. We're going to finish that up, get that out of our hair. So I was watching along with this video from Proto Coding. It's a pretty good channel. Go give him a like and subscribe. Our bootcamp grabs getting six-figure jobs. So he was a bootcamp grab. I think he was a bootcamp grab as well. And they're going to get into the bootcamp story. So just for full disclosure, I was a bootcamp grad for a bootcamp called Hack Reactor. Now I'm a professional developer, and I actually took I did some Android development. I took a little break from that and was doing like time massage, doing some other stuff. And then I got back into I realized I need to get some more web development skills. So I saw this boot camp and Hack Reactor, and they had like a little course, like a free course you could go to locally. And I liked the style and how they presented. And I was already a professional developer. All I needed is what are the current trends? What are the current things? And it was super fun. It was like going to summer school. So I've done two boot camps. And I'd already been a professional developer before I did the boot camp. So I had a completely different experience than most other people. It was still challenging, still difficult to go through that stuff because you're learning whole different paradigms, and a lot of things had changed. A lot of things had been the same, and then navigating. It was like super fun. Anyway, so my last one I went to was Hack Reactor. It's gone. I think it got absorbed into some other company, and it was fun. I was fine. I actually liked it a lot, and got a lot out of it. Even though the economy totally dipped right after I graduated, that thing, it took a while to get a job, but it wasn't that bad. I actually got a lot of it. Now my cohort, I had 18 people or something like that. Most people didn't continue software development. Even the smartest guy in the class, he actually never even applied to a job. So it's always a mixed bag. It's always what you take to the table. And I didn't even think about doing a boot camp. I tried to doing some of that stuff on my own, but I would just need a little bit of guidance and a little bit of which tool sets to use. And I definitely got that. And then some paradigms, how to think about these things. And JavaScript is quite different from other languages because it's Lisp basically underneath. So I had never done a Lisp programming language before JavaScript. So anyway, I thought it was pretty useful, but not everyone. I probably was one of 4 people in that class that is still doing software development. Even the best guys that were top of the show, they quit within a couple years, and that's kind of how things are. So you really have to have it have the computer. If you really want to do successful with this going forward, you're going to have to be kind of into it for its own sake, and also into how to apply this to real world problems, which is what I go into my series, adventure driven development. I go into full detail about what that's all about. Let's keep going.
So let's dive into boot camps. So I want to give some backstory on mine first, since this was 2015. Yeah, let's talk about what the landscape was like then, and then we can talk about what your landscape was like, and we can talk about the landscape now. And just
I went from 2018 was when I did mine. I graduated right before 2019, so December 2018 was when I finished mine.
How nowadays there's so much propaganda, so many kind of lies to really push you to getting into boot camp. It really is disingenuous.
It really is. Now, I would say
for sure. Now it is. It's totally grifting. And mine, Hack Reactor, it was okay. But right after that, when they got acquired, they totally start doing the grifting hardcore. It was like, whoa, you guys totally sold out. Before that, it was because it was still the founders who were kind of involved, and it was their curriculum, and some of the courses were still taught by them. But as soon as it got sold, or was it galvanized? Whatever.
It was a heyday. There was a golden era. I don't know when it was.
Yeah, see, there was a golden era. Exactly. When this first stuff started, it was early adopters, people getting into it. I was at the tail end of that. There was a big pulse. And then by the time I was interested, it was this is going on too long. The ZERP thing was still going hardcore. I was like, what the fuck? So I eventually got it, and I was at the tail end of it before it kind of fell out in 2019. Dipped temporarily, then it took off again.
I couldn't probably say that.
Because the pando.
But there was. It's because when I got into it, I feel like I could see the remnants of something that was beautiful.
Yeah. That was how I saw it too. I was I saw the tail end of it. Oh man, I should have gotten this. This way I said to myself, damn it, I should have gotten this sooner. But I just was totally not interested because I was doing this Thai massage stuff. I was having a lot of fun, doing that, and rebuilding a house and all this other stuff, which I got really got the skills to restore houses and do the Thai massage and body work. That was super fun. Like I was just dig that so hard for lots of reasons. So I was like not interested in doing coding at all because I would have had to give that all up. And I was like, man, not yet.
So was it was 2020 or was it the end of 2019 you hopped into the bootcamp?
It was the end of 2019 when I made the decision because that's when I saw through WeChat, through my Wuhan group chats, that Wuhan was descending into chaos. They were like bringing in the military and dumping construction debris on the roads and bridges and tunnels.
Ooh.
It was like a zombie movie. So in
Yeah, he goes into that in another one of his videos.
December, I was like, okay, so the world's at least shutting down. And a piece of advice that my dad gave me when I was very
and every man in Ireland is this guy right here.
young, which of course he doesn't remember giving me, which is ironically always the way it is. The most important lessons that parents distill.
If you ain't first, you're last. That's the best drunk lesson any kid was ever taught.
And he said, there's no reason to bet on the end of the world because if you're right, there'll be no one around to pay you.
Wow.
So it's basically a lesson in optimism.
I really love that. This is the second time he said it. It's a really great quote. If you bet on the end of the world, it doesn't matter if you win. It's like, don't do that. Yeah, if things go to shit, oh well, that's just how things go to shit. But you have to like, yeah, that's so what you win. Okay, so don't bet on that. Like bet on this other thing, which it's probably gonna fail as well. But at least you have a chance. And there's so few people who are even trying because they've been told to shut up and just go to sleep. There's so few people trying that the ones that are trying, yeah, there's a pretty good chance you keep going. You're going to get there and have a good attitude about it at least. Don't be like, I can't get it after the third try. Well, it's like, no, it's going to take you more than 3 tries, buddy. You're lucky if it takes you 3 tries.
Optimism is great. I mean, it's what, too many people are being too pessimistic nowadays.
Well, it's programmed.
Valuable because especially in hindsight with the whole lockdown, what percentage of the population used it effectively and productively? A huge percentage, probably the super majority.
Yeah.
Just sat around and did nothing for 6 months.
Right. I didn't. I moved to Mexico and learned the like KMP development.
Just wanted to think about was a percentage of the population that really didn't do anything besides, in some states where weed was legal, they just kind of just sat there and just got high and got paid $80,000 a year with unemployment benefits.
Yeah. People lean into video games.
That's they're now paying the penalty. Whoever did that, they're paying the penalty for that because they're now in that rut without the money. It's like fuck. So you're sitting around don't do anything at your parents' house without the money, and you're like, all right.
Which is extra insulting for video game companies like Blizzard. I think they lost something like 30% of their user base during quarantine. When people were forced to stay home and play video games, everyone chose not to play their games.
Wow.
That's incredible.
I love that.
Cool, man. So yeah, I think, all right, so maybe the heyday was when I was there. So I didn't really know, there's a dev bootcamp, which is the one I went to, DEV bootcamp, and then there's development bootcamp, I believe, or something similar. So I may have, in a previous video, talked about this other one that was similar. So the one I went to was founded in 2012. It actually sold to Kaplan in like 2015. And owner of that probably made a significant amount of money from that. And it just expanded way too big. And then it kind of went bust.
They think they can just scale up what the founder did without the founder being there to do the curation. It's mostly curation, like what not to do, what not to say. And also like understand, like a lot of stuff is trade secrets, right? So it only scales so far. Like there's stuff that beginners can understand, intermediates can understand, and there's advanced stuff, which you can only get into that by applying the stuff you learned. And there's no checklist. That's the adventure-driven stuff. That's what I'm talking about.
Joined the program, and so 2015. And again, let's talk about why I even joined it. I was a CS grad. Why would I go into bootcamps? I remember at the time, I was told that if you want to get into computer science, you need to learn web development. And with my CS degree, I didn't understand a lot of web development. I knew a lot of computer science stuff. I didn't know a lot of web development, things like that. So,
well, that was just hot at that time if you want to be employed and make money, et cetera, et cetera. But there's all kinds of other stuff in computer science, of course.
I had a friend who went here, and she was building apps after she graduated and had some press around it from some of her apps she built that I saw, on some very local obscure paper. And to me, I was like, oh my God, I have to get into this because I'll be building apps and doing all these things. Right. So for me, it wasn't getting a $100,000 job. It wasn't.
So you want to build apps, not provide services for users for some niche problem. You want to make apps because that was the thing, right? All you got to do is make an app and you're good. And that was a golden age, and there's certain times when that becomes available. But now is the time when you actually have to have a real customer. So you have to have a real problem that you have an actual solution for that someone's willing to pay for. And that's the threshold, not build an app. It's find the customer, build a solution, and then all that process, which is hard because those customers are wily.
The FAANG level jobs, the prestige of that wasn't the driving factor. It was more of, I can go to this, I can start making apps that will get users and get notoriety and get me out there.
Right, he has a little bit of the right motivation sort of, because to get users and get notoriety, you have to actually solve a problem that they have. So you're at least paying attention to what the core value is, so not the app.
That's why when I joined it, the pay structure for it was, I think it might have been like 10 or 12 grand, and it was 3 months remote and then 3 months extremely intensive in New York City. So the interesting thing that this bootcamp did, cool. And I wonder if your bootcamp...
That's kind of what Hack Reactor did. They make you do this pre-course, which was great, by the way. And at that time, it was free and the pre-course was actually told me like 80% of what I needed to know, and most people couldn't make it through the pre-course. So the Hack Factor had a screening process that was actually quite good. That you actually kind of had to know how to program already. You had to be past the beginner level. That's why they had the free courses out that would basically teach people the real super basics, and then you had to pass this entrance exam, which some people didn't pass, or some people had to pass. They took them a couple times to pass. So it was a little bit more stricter and a little bit more advanced than most of these other boot camps I've seen the curriculums of, and that was okay with me because I could handle it, and I really enjoyed it, even though it was a challenge. It was a lot expected, and there's a lot of new technologies and new techniques and new paradigms to put together with how JavaScript runs and how the web runs and all that stuff from where I was coming from Android. I was eventually able to see where they branched off. Like Android is basically just a web browser, and how the Chrome took off and had a similar route. But that took a while. I got it now. It's like, okay, whatever. And whatever else comes out, I'll be like, okay, I see what you're trying to do. But going up that path was it was not easy.
Camp did this.
Is it totally worth it, by the way, to learn under the hood how to do full stack development from beginning, the back end, the front end, the whole thing, and having to force yourself to do that several times. It was very valuable.
If you had to like go through 3 phases, and at the end of each phase was a test, and if you failed that test, you couldn't progress at all.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, that's cool.
So that's incredible. I would assume that boot camps would just let everyone pass nowadays.
Well, yeah, that's how it is now. Pretty much, they make it really super easy because they want your money. Then not. I see that at that time when I was still doing the hack ready, they still wanted the reputation. So if they lowered the barrier to entry, the reputation would get lowered because the people that graduate from that thing aren't going to places where they can say, "Hey, somebody went to the FAANG." I was never interested in that, but that's a big motivation why they kept the standards high. And eventually, when they sold, immediately the standards dropped.
Okay, so my bootcamp used that as part of its marketing to try to make it sound like it was really prestigious, because we have a test every Friday that you're not allowed to fail. You can retake it on Saturday, but if you get to Monday and you haven't taken it, you're kicked out of the program. And then there was a larger unit test at the end of each month that you had to also pass, otherwise you couldn't progress. But
yeah, they had similar stuff. There was similar stuff. So they had the standards were super high. And like when these things get sold, they just drop the standards and don't keep the promises the same and just milk it.
What they were really doing is they were just trying to cull people who were less likely to pay their contract.
So you were in an ISA program, huh?
Exactly right. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, so
okay, ISA came in after I went. They were just talking about ISAs, which is where you basically, when you get a job, you pay the company a percentage of your salary for a certain period of time, so you pay off the fee for your education. So I could see them wanting to do that too, but again, you're gonna come to hit a limit pretty quick with the number of people who are capable of doing this work, and the competition was super. There was a bunch of these that happened at the same time, and they kind of milked it, man. I think they got the maximum, but they thought they could get out of it because people have now. Because I just saw the quality that happened after the Galvanized took over, and I was like, "This isn't. You guys are actually selling this as the same thing." And I was like, "No, this isn't the same thing, man."
My ISA I signed, which apparently ended up getting overturned. I think I have California to thank for that, because the company was called Lambda School.
Oh, you went to Lambda School. That was supposed to be a good one.
Now I think now they call it Bootcamp or something like that. But the ISA was supposed to be 17% of your before tax salary for up to either 2 years or $30,000, whichever one you hit first.
Mm-hmm. Wait, so you would potentially pay $30,000,
which is a good deal if you're gonna if you are actually good programming, you just want to hone it and get a couple projects under your belt and like really hone your skills because you already kind of were good. Because a lot of guys that came in and did that when I was with them, there's about 30% who were already coding and they're already doing it. They just want the finishing touch, which is what I wanted, but there's only so many guys out there like that. There's only so many people that are like already doing it and they just want to do that next little hump over. Instead of taking 6 to 9 months, they do it in 3, right? They just want to rock it from there. And so it makes sense. Because 30 grand, you're gonna pay for it. You get 150 grand salary. Yeah, it makes total sense. But most people, they can't do that. There's just a limited number of people who are capable of that. I think everyone that wanted to do it already did it.
Grand for your bootcamp experience.
Potentially, yeah. But you have to get a really good job because I think the threshold was only like 60 grand a year. So if you're paying the 17% on 60,000, you wouldn't pay 30.
How with today's job market,
which back then was like you're not gonna get a 60K job. you're gonna have to get. You're gonna get. So you're gonna get a 100K job, 150K job, 120K job. That which is not unusual. It was not unusual in my cohort. There's a few people that had that. I definitely was one of them. So eventually.
I mean, who's repaying now with how hard? I see a lot of developers struggling to get jobs now. I don't think that this is a way to be profitable at all.
No,
it all collapsed. When I joined Lambda School, they had just gotten like an 8-figure round of funding, and all of the students and we were all sort of speculating. We're thinking, I think they only had one cohort graduate before us, or maybe two. The school was brand new when I joined.
Right. So that was just a money grift. Because there are periods of time when this stuff happens, like the trade school stuff. So there are times when this happened. They just took these people were just entrepreneurial and took advantage of the time, and it was fun too. Let's be real about it as well. It was pretty fun. Like that Ruby language with a hacker, like Hack Reactor. They started out with Ruby, and Ruby was a game changer because before that was Perl and all this Perl script crap. Ugh. So when Ruby came along, you could do backends super easy and fast and flexible in a very JavaScripty type language before there was Node. Yeah, it was super fun because you could zip up these websites and start services and start serving customers because the fruit was low hanging.
And they had two programs.
It's not low hanging now.
One was 6 months and one was 18 months. And you could do a part-time 18 months, or you could do 10 to 15 hours a day for.
Yeah, Hack Reactor had something like that. Eventually, after I graduated, they started that stuff.
6 months.
Wait, did you mention was this in person?
No, this was 100% remote.
Wow, that is interesting. So wow.
Yeah, so the Hack Reactor was 100% in person, but you could do the first part of the testing pre-phase remote, but and semi-remote because you could still go to those classes. But then it was in person for that like 3 or 4 months or something. It was super fun. It was like at the end it was exhausting, but like I enjoyed it. Other people, I could see how they weren't really ready for what the job entailed, and obviously they didn't continue on because barely anybody's still doing development except me.
I got back from China,
which I've been doing the whole time. Even when I quit and was doing the massage work, I was thinking about it every once in a while, but I was like, nah, that was too much hassle because I was having so much fun doing the massage work and then rebuilding that house and stuff. So let's keep going.
In 2019, I realized that the world was gonna, at the very least, slow down, pause. So I moved back to my parents' place, and I'm a carpenter in my free time, so I like to build computer setups. And so I built a 3-monitor setup where I was laying down underneath, just as degenerate as you can
That's
imagine.
amazing.
And I got a lawn chair off of Amazon, so I was laying all the way flat with the monitors above me, and I just laid there 15 hours a day for the next 5.5 months.
Was that
just because of COVID that it was remote? Like after COVID, did it become in person, or was it always remote?
No, I think it was always remote. Even all of the employees were. At least when I joined, they were.
Lambda was remote. Oh, no, that didn't used to be. It was used to be in person, but I think with the Roni thing, they all went remote. Yeah,
were all graduates from previous cohorts.
Wow.
So, other than the CEO, I don't know if anybody was like really a part of it. Everyone was. I don't know. It's hard to describe. It was like a snowball going down a hill, just picking up people as it goes.
So if you had, for example, mine was like, I think it was like 10 or 12 grand at the time. Would you have rather paid that, or was the idea of you could go to it for free and pay later more appealing?
So I liked the ISA because, again, I can't remember what the threshold was.
The ISA is awesome because you don't get the money. You don't have to pay ahead of time. You wait until you actually, if they deliver the thing that they said to you and they thought you were capable of it, then yeah, it's a pretty good deal. But
I think it was like $60,000. I like the idea that you pay nothing if you don't get a job. And then even if you do get a job, but it's a low pay, you still pay nothing. Because my first job in the industry, it was only, I think, $32,000 a year. So I didn't make the threshold.
Mm-hmm.
So I worked that first job for 7 months without paying any of the ISA. It wasn't until I got hired at Deloitte that I broke the threshold and started paying. And then, even then, I think
$32K after the boot camp, dude. What the fuck?
I was only on track to pay like $22,000. I think I paid $11,000 in my first year at Deloitte, and then I got this message that was telling me about how ISAs had been contested in court and that they were probably no longer valid. And then once I got that message,
it's just a contract.
The ISA company, because some payment company buys the ISAs, the school doesn't keep them. So once you've signed the ISA, the school sells the ISA.
It's a conscious mortgage.
Say to some company who then hounds you for the money.
What are those called in the CDOs or whatever? In what movie was that with Steve Rowan and Ryan Gosling, the Wall Street movie? I can't think of the name of it right now.
The Big Short.
The Big Short, yeah. Like all the ISAs go to like a CDO.
Yeah, it's like the mortgage-backed security stuff. Yeah, this is what it's financialized. Of course they're gonna sell it. Are they gonna wait around from you? No, they want the money now. They're about to fly out of town, guys. Of course they're gonna sell it to somebody else. No, you can. Here's a $10,000 debt, which I'll pay. Give me $8,000 now, and you got it. These guys are good for it. They're all software engineers working at big tech FAANG companies.
Crap, and they just package it together and get rated as AAA or something. Yeah. Cool. Hey, do you mind moving to the left just a little bit for some reason?
Of course, it's financialized. You thought the boot camp companies would sit there and just collect each little check? Are you high?
Yeah. Now you're perfect. Now perfect. So interesting. So let's go through mine. So it's interesting that you're remote because a lot of the networking I got was being in person. I mean, we were there 8 hours a day seeing people, and it was tough. I know. I remember that there were some people there that they couldn't progress, and a lot of the time, Dev Bootcamp wouldn't refund you if you got to a point and still didn't progress because you would have already.
I mean, that's kind of fair, right? Like if you're gonna keep going, you obviously don't know you're happening, and they're like, okay, you're not really making them forward, and you keep going anyway. Well, yeah, they're gonna keep your money. Come on. Oh, they get full refund. Oh, everybody comes in. Everybody, a horde of people, like 500 people in the class, and everyone goes to the exact point where they can't cut off anymore, and then they get rid of it. Like, oh, no, come on, stop.
Already have done 75% of the boot camp, and after that, you still had to pass a test to get to the final stage, which still some people couldn't. And I think that is it's just a great bar to have because if you can't pass the boot camp, you should probably think of taking coding more as a hobby than doing it as a profession.
Right. You shouldn't say, oh, I want to do medical transcribing. It's like, oh, or should I do coding? It's the same thing, right? It's coding, yeah.
I hugely support. If you were to ask me like a general poll of percentage, like if you were to ask me a ratio of software as profession versus hobby, I radically support it as a hobby because
it's so fun as a hobby.
The timelines
it's way better as a hobby because I was doing it as a little kid till I paid for it for like 5, 6, 7, 8. Started at like 12. No, 7, 8 when I started my first computer back in the Boston Computer Museum. And so I was a hobbyist for at least 10 years before I had a real paying gig. That was really software that I had to deliver. So yeah, it was super fun. Like, yeah.
Are so much more realistic. If you have bills to pay and you're considering an industry shift, it's completely unrealistic to suggest going into software. You're gonna be homeless long before you get a job.
Yeah.
I know.
Now there was a time during the ZERP or whatever the hell was the reason. People have different reasons for it. But yeah, during the ZERP, the last 15 years, it was freaking golden age. No, that's not gonna repeat anytime soon. So the people who are left into it are gonna be the ones that are into it because that stuff's not the way it is anymore. That's gone. All right, let's the computer slow down, and we're back.
I know it's a lot of, I would say, so again, this was brand new in 2015. Really, this is when it first started. So a lot of people were switching industries completely. And a lot of people were older. Some people were in their 50s.
I think Hack Reactor started 2014 or 2015.
Doing this. And again, I'm not going to say they can't do it, but you got to realize you're going to have to, these people have families. You're going to have to commit tons of hours. I mean, you know how many hours you have to commit to really understanding it. I mean, it took me probably 5 years until I was starting to get, well into the 6-figure jobs. Like that wasn't even, an option for me before 5 years in the industry working. It was insane.
Yeah.
So
same with me.
Yeah. Then we graduated and I had about 20 people in my cohort. And I actually reached out to all 20 of them. And I said, are you still in coding? This was about 2 years ago. And only 3 of them were still coding. So
see, look at that. Same numbers as me. You had about 20. Yeah. 3 left. Yeah.
4 of the 20 are still coding. The other 16 went through that 6-month process, spent all that time, did all these things to then get into some other stuff.
Right.
Yep. Yeah. Almost nobody at Lambda got a job. Almost nobody.
Wow. At least the Hack Reactor people did get employed. Almost everybody did for a little while. But then they quit.
Wow.
My TA, the guy who was a previous cohort graduate, who was then teaching my cohort, he is the one who, when he got a job and that company needed another developer, he went back to Lambda and he posted that job and I replied to that job and that's how I got my first position. And there's one,
that's probably one of the best things about it is that stuff right there. But that's gone now.
One other woman in my...
I mean, it's way limited because it's boot camps. You can't teach people how to code in just a few months. It takes about 2 years.
Cohort who I know at least briefly worked in software, and I don't know anyone else in my cohort who did.
Wow.
So
very unlikely you would even get a job or even stick into programming outside of maybe 5 years after going to a bootcamp, which is kind of shocking, because I just remember everyone in it was so gung-ho and so into becoming programmers.
Right, because they had the dollar signs. It wasn't the same reason that these guys may have been. Well, he did it for the dollar signs. So yes, everyone's super psyched. We're gonna be rich. All I gotta do is learn this bullshit, crazy ass coding, JavaScript, web, CSS stuff, Node, module, blah blah blah. Yeah, I'll put up with this, but they were just putting up with it. They weren't really into it. They were like, okay, this is cool. And then they were like, I'm just gonna get a job, right? The whole thing was like, for me, it was never about the job. It was like, okay, well, it's a stepping stone or something else. And they're like, I want to get a job, and I'm gonna be rich.
And to find out that really, what is it? 20% of the cohort is still coding. It's unbelievable. And then the one final thing I want to touch on with my experience is, the FAANG companies. Everyone's like, oh, you're going to go to these bootcamps.
But they don't tell you that. Of course, they don't tell you that. They're like, you're going to have a career for the rest of your life. You're going to have a rich career for the rest of your life. You don't have to worry about it because Uncle Bob said so.
And then you could work at FAANG. And at the time, FAANG really wasn't even a buzzword. This was like pre-FAANG being a buzzword.
Right.
And I remember out of I would say I saw about 5 or 6 cohorts go through.
People still knew about Facebook. People knew about Netflix. People knew about Apple. Come on. Everyone knew the FAANG keyword, but everybody knew about those companies. And that's where they're all headed. Come on now. It was a ticket out of their bullshit. All they had to do was learn this crazy ass coding stuff, which the boot camp gave them everything and also how to like pass the exams. And then you have a job until the layoffs came.
That's about 120 people, 120, 140 people. And really, only one of them I remember was unbelievably smart. And he actually went on to work at Stripe. And Stripe, if you see them on levels at FYI, they have a pretty hefty TC. So really, out of all those people, the only one person was able to really break into the industry and get paid big total compensation in the near future. So what does this tell me? It's like, you're going to get a $100,000 job. Yeah, one out of like 120, 140 people who's actually, I don't want to say genius, but brilliant as a person.
Yeah. It just took a different path. They were gonna get there anyway, right? And they just took a different path. So that's what I've noticed with these companies. And these cohorts. That's the normal. But they don't tell you this ahead of time. So that's the part that they're kind of cheating about. Because if these boot camps were to tell you that 80% of you will not be coding in 2 years, be like, what do you know? They gotta tell you they're gonna be rich. You're gonna have $100 million at the end of your stock options. They gotta say all that stuff because they gotta get you in the seat. The sales driven, man. Come on now.
Perfect word. Yep. Is going to break into it. And then they use that to kind of say, oh, look, one person broke into it. Like, this is an actual graduate that broke into it, even though really he's the amazing person or whoever, he, she, whatever.
Right. It's not the fucking boot camp. It's the person. Holy crap. And see, that's right. They try and like conflate that. It's like, hey, we're the ones that kind of made it happen. I mean, sort of true, but it was him that made it happen. Let's be real clear about it. So by promoting it that way, you're attracting a person that's like, oh, you're going to do it for me? You're going to be the secret little special sauce? Like, no, man. You have the special sauce inside. And they put the little icing on the cake so you can zip off because there's a little hump you get over for whatever the reason is. And that's really what's going on. But never say that because that doesn't drive sales. That's not in the sales script.
Older, younger, they're the amazing person that was able to grasp these concepts. Like, they're an anomaly, but they try to make it like that's the norm.
And that's the core to the propaganda, to their whole sales pitch. The value thesis has to have the foundation of anybody can do this. That has to be the concept. Now, that might be true if the demand for
anybody can do it, but also there's this other thing that do they want to do it? Because you're telling them it's going to be the wonderful things, those large salaries, you'll be set for life. But then there's like what the job actually entails. Punch a Jira ticket, put your points on the poker table and then get 0. You ever got the same points? Why do you think it's a 4 not an 8? That's not a Fibonacci number.
Developers 10x. If companies were not allowed to outsource, if there were no H-1B visas, if AI wasn't on the horizon, then maybe you could see the demand for
not the AI except but the other stuff
for U.S. developers skyrocket. But that's not going to happen. In fact, everything's going in the opposite direction.
Right.
And so I think when I joined the industry is probably
that's why you have to niche down. That's why the big global low hanging fruit where everything's globalized. That's where. So this is the thing. They've doubled down on this H-1B offshoring thing, right? Most U.S. companies have done this. So now they're open for direct attack by smaller companies, more nimble, who listen to Alan Kay and are willing to slice off pieces of these businesses and work in a truly agile way, truly adventure-driven way, which I'm not going to say agile, adventure-driven way that you can then ramp up for your people's thing together. And then, get the user demand, and knock off some of the segments of these bigger companies who are frozen. They cannot move. They're like huge dinosaurs. You could be like a little mouse.
Probably right about the time when you could no longer be a mediocre developer and expect to have a successful career.
Correct. Yeah, there was a moment. That moment's gone. It was an anomaly to begin with. It was never gonna last. It was never gonna be real anyway. And so the thing is, the sales pitch, they got away with it for a little while because the circumstances were such, but that's over now.
And that's what these boot camps were essentially turning out. The only things we learned were React and Node. I spent 5.5 months. I probably made like 30 React Node projects.
Yes.
And every single one of them was a relational database. So outside of React.
Well, I did different stuff, but it was all Node and React. I mean, we do other stuff, but it was we actually learned Angular and a bunch of other things. But it's still the front end stuff. We never actually went down into the CSS. Never did one class on CSS. I was like, why? It's like you got to learn that on your own. Like, okay. But how do we structure this thing? It's like we don't know. It's like okay. Instead of like saying we don't know, it's like you're gonna learn that on your own. It's like, I mean, they had a little bit of HTML, but we should have learned how to build our own React. That would have been more better. And then use it, build our own stuff, and then use it. That would have been way better than just jumping into these freaking front end Webpack. You gotta learn Webpack. It's a fucking clusterfuck and a half. We gotta learn all the parameters, like 16 pages of the parameters. You make sure that's correct with the Webpack parameter list. It's like, oh my god, dude.
And relational databases with Node and Express and connects. I learned nothing. We had like a couple of weeks there.
I learned something. So what I learned was because I already knew how stuff worked underneath, right? I already had that. So I had this way jump up from other people in the class who they were just taking from this high level thing and then kind of like imagining what was happening and believe it's like you guys are wrong. So there's a lot of people that can like follow instructions directly without having to understand what's happening underneath, and that's fine for them. But I was trying to go a little deeper, so I was kind of being a shithead a little bit. Sorry, whoever taught me. Those guys, they were pretty patient, but like they didn't really know. So that was the thing that frustrated me is like I would get to a level where their knowledge had ceased, and I had a lot of knowledge, right? I had a lot of knowledge, but their knowledge stopped, and but I was able to fill in the gaps and get way more out of it than anybody else probably in that class because I was coming at it from this other point of view, right? So that's why I enjoyed it. Even though it was bullshit, I knew it was bullshit. And I knew it was like, I don't think you're going to teach everybody this stuff. I don't think everybody's even capable of it. And you kind of admit that with your, the stringent requirements to get in here. And you have your people out there teaching basics, and you know that the people that show up to that free class, 99% of them are not going to come in. So I'm like the one guy. I mean, you're like, well, look, wait, it worked. It's like, nah, that guy was that. I just wanted to see your approach. You weren't really teaching me anything at those classes. I just want to see your approach of like how you teaching methodology as a preview. And it was a really good preview, like how they do the classes. They show, let you see it ahead of time. But most people, they weren't ready for the ramp up. Because there's the beginner classes like this, and then they get the pre-course stuff like this, and then the classes like this. It's like you're expected to run these things every week, like a whole new application, and spin it up and get everything working and not bug, and actually operational in just a few days. It's super fun with other people, by the way. Yeah, I loved it. I thought it was great. I learned a lot, but most people.
At the end where we practiced interviews, but even that was just hopelessly not good enough. And it was also
yeah, definitely not. But it gets you prepared. But the thing is, at that time, you didn't really have to. The industry was so desperate for developers of any kind of type that they were willing to take somebody in that looked somewhat capable and res them up.
So a wake-up call because it was obvious why they left that to the end, because the supermajority of the people,
because the companies now are trying to do this offshore thing. They're trying to do an H-1B visa. They bring the people in here, but they're gonna bump up against the bureaucracy for one, and then getting attacked. Their niche is getting attacked by people like me and you who are gonna go like, oh, I can't attack them. It's like, yes, you can attack them directly. You can take their market. They can already establish a market. You just got a niche inside it, and
when there couldn't, and myself included, probably
because they're not going to be able to respond. The worst thing they can do is hire some hackers and try to attack your website, and you just put a Cloudflare in front of it, right? And it's like, hey, try your best, guys.
The algorithms were just going over our heads, and like a prospect that we're supposed.
Yes. Most people. See, this is the thing. This is the part that you have to learn, and this is the part that the brain is just not wanting to deal with. Because I remember as a kid trying to go through and learn, I had some vision of how I wanted it to be, and how did I get it to the machine to even get close. It took years. I would copy all the programs and just try and figure what the fuck, how does this work? And eventually you develop your own little mechanisms for doing things. It takes years.
That we're supposed to be graduating in a couple of weeks, and everybody is bitterly struggling with algorithms, and the people
as well they should, because it takes you have to like buy paper, work out step by step, but it takes hours and hours and hours and hours. and then you have a way you think you want to do it, and then you try and do it in the computer, and it's like not even close. And having to go through that whole process takes hours because you're having to re-establish in your mind how this machine wants the things laid out and what it's capable of, what it's not capable of, what you're capable of. All that stuff takes years.
Well, running the program are telling us you're going to have to be able to do these to pass an interview. We're all looking at each other like, well, why did we just spend the last 6 months doing React projects? Why didn't we start practicing algorithms from day one?
So Hack Reactor did do this. That was one thing they did do. They went through, we basically rebuilt, was it lit or no, not lit. It was underscore. So we, through that process, which we had to do, was the first series, the first part of the course was rewriting this library that had all these different algorithms, and you had to rewrite them from scratch. And and it was really actually kind of fun. It was actually pretty fun because they took time and let people go through that and understand it, and took a little bit. So I really enjoyed that part because it gave me the fluency of what the language is capable of and how it all interrelates with each other. With JavaScript, because it's kind of unusual how it does it, because it's a software based language. You know, it doesn't compile down to some bytecode to run somewhere that's static. It can be self modified on the fly, which is super. I love that. And people don't like that about JavaScript, but I think it's just super powerful. It's actually what Alan Kay was talking about. Anyway, let's keep going.
That's the CS degree. I mean, that's you know, I had experience with that with, you know, discrete mathematics and things like that from the CS degree. You know, that's where you're gonna get them. But I'm gonna say something that you're gonna hate, and a lot of people in the industry are gonna hate it. My first 2 jobs, I did not have to do a single DSA, data structures and algorithms type leak code type question at all with these jobs.
Yeah, I only started this DSA leak code questions after 2015, 2016. They started doing this DSA algorithm stuff because they got overwhelmed with people coming in just bullshitting their way, being on the job for a couple months, then getting fired. So they started this DSA thing to see if people actually did have a degree. And yeah, the results of that were like most people had no idea what they're doing, so they were being overwhelmed. So that's why that came into being, was because of Google being overwhelmed with people bullshitting their way onto the job, and then we're going for it. Because in the beginning it was like, oh, just nerds in there, but then eventually when the money started happening, it's like, oh, they got scam artists now, and that's why they got initiated. It wasn't for just like regular people. I mean, honestly, so the DSA it's just a shortcut for them to weed out people. You can, if you're a programmer, you can just talk to another person, and for like half an hour, you'll know what their level's at. Even just 10 minutes, you can tell where their level's at. Come on now.
Yeah.
There's a programmer cannot bullshit another programmer. If you're really in it, you won't be able to be bullshit by someone who's not in it. And I think that's where a lot of this interviewing stuff goes wrong, because they're trying to mass interview so many people that they had to get a method versus having as someone who's valuable, like an engineer, could be doing other things, doing interview process. And they just said that can't happen, so they got to do the shortcut with the DSA algorithms things. Let's keep going.
Yeah.
And a lot of the time now, it's like the norm. You know, even at smaller, medium-sized companies.
Right.
I see,
because that's that cargo cult stuff. But again, that's going away. Well, I mean, they're going to still do the DSA algorithm stuff, but mostly there's going offshore and getting scammed over by those people using the AI to cheat, and they're going to figure out like, man, I guess we're going to have to try it onshore again. This H1B thing, and onshoring all these developers that could be Americans. Yeah, we'll see how far that keeps going, because people are getting a little upset about that.
See the value in them,
and but even the H1B people, when they come over, yes, it's better with where they came from, but they're still being abused, still being used. Come on.
From what I've seen, you want to structure it to be like a real world question. You don't want it to be so academic. You know, like reversing a linked list. You know, you're never going to do that in the wild.
Not to mention, if you need, so academic's a great word for it, because I'll always give the tech stack that Lambda chose the credit it deserves, because the super majority of positions in at least the web dev part of the industry, which is the biggest part of the industry, that is totally sufficient. You're never going to need more than that, realistically.
They figured out their sales. They figured out the sales pipe, and they designed the sales pipe for them. That was not a mistake. That was not an error. That was not an oversight. That was an intentional choice based on the demands that they're getting from industry and what people are getting hired on as. So they're honing, they're optimizing this thing, which is not software development. It's this other bootcampy optimized sales pipeline.
And when you do need more, you can learn that on the job. So I don't necessarily fault them for the tech stack. Instead, the line was never properly drawn, like you said, between academic usage of data structures and algorithms and when you might actually use it in the real world. And there was never an acknowledgement that if you needed to use it in the real world, it wouldn't be some super high pressure scenario where you don't have access to Google and you have 3 minutes to do it. I've gotten take home, or where they send you a link to like a third party that does
like a hacker rank or something similar to that, code signal. Yeah.
I've been sent those before where I've had 5 in a row and I've had 3 minutes to do the first 4 and then 15 minutes to do the last one.
Yeah.
And then when
that is just stupid. I've never heard time constraints like that. Wow.
Yeah, I mean, the whole time constraint, that just tells me that company is probably not one you want to live at. And then that's not even going to be available. You shouldn't be working at those kind of companies anyway. You should be trying to find a different way to create your own thing or get involved with something else that's more niche down, and not these big fat companies who honestly don't give a fuck about you. And the moment they can get rid of you, they will.
And then when I made it to the next round of the interview where I was talking to a person, I was asking them, because I didn't finish the 4th question. I was like, does that mean that, I can expect to not go any further? And they were like, no, nobody finishes the 4th question. We'd actually think it was really suspicious if you did. I was like, so it was a trick?
Yeah, it's
so so they're cargo culting Google practices without understanding that they're cargo culting, and these businesses likely will be gone soon because that's not how you hire people. Come on now.
DP type problem. They'll really just trip you up. I see that a lot too. They
dynamic programming. Yeah, that stuff is goofy. I mean, if you have a case where you're going to need to learn how that stuff works and what you need to do there, it'll become obvious. And you just learn it then, as opposed to I gotta know how to do it from scratch, regurgitate source code on demand like a leak code grinder. Yeah, that just got eliminated by AI. Just went boop. Yeah, code completed. Boop. Bye bye leak coder. Bye bye.
When I took a Capital One coding test, I got like 2 3/4 of it right. I just couldn't fix one test case. It was like a dumb like closest neighbor type DFS graphing problem. I just remember that it took me a while just to write the code to start doing it in this like weird editor that they gave me. And it's also I'm out of time.
The weird editor, no access to Google. This stuff's just goofy. You're going to Capital One. You want to work for a bank? Are you insane? All right.
And then the last problem that I skipped to, it would have taken me at least 20 minutes, and my time limit was like 8 to figure it out, which would never happen. And then, again, I asked the recruiter, and they go, oh, really, it's only if you could get that 3rd question, we take you, we'll make you an offer, which I was close to, but nope, not good enough, yeah. So.
And then they
dodge a bullet, imho.
Try to sneak in comprehension problem as well, because sometimes, and this is a little bit conspiratorial, but I swear, sometimes it feels like the people
I love it. Let's get into it.
Who designed the problem know that the data structure isn't complex enough for this to be a challenging problem, so they write it in a complex way, or they write it in a confusing way. And that's always felt so disingenuous to me, because
so that's some more cargo code. We're gonna be next Google. You don't understand. We got some pretty great technology. We're gonna be the next Facebook, and we're gonna take over MySpace and Friendster as well.
If you really want to test whether or not I know this tech, why are you trying to confuse me with a word game?
Because this is cargo cults. And this is HR departments. Well, you gotta kind of give them a little. You gotta kind of confuse these candidates because we got scammers coming through, and when we confuse them like this, those scammers are gone. They can't take it. Those scammers, they can't take it. They can't take our Weasley wild word problems. It gets them all screwed up. We've done some surveys. We've done some statistical analysis, and we got no scammers after we initiated the Weasley word problem.
And so again, under this 3, 4, 5 minute time constraint, and I've got a wall of text in front of me that's designed to be as confusing as possible. I'm reading the text. I'm like, I think I know what it's asking. Why isn't this written simply? Why am I not coding right now? Why am I trying to?
I can tell you why. They want you to follow instructions. That's another thing I learned after debugging the leak code.
That's a good point.
Whatever they give you in the prompt, you need to double, triple, quadruple check it as many times as possible, because a lot of the time.
Yeah. So one of the things they taught us at the Hack Wreckers, you have to repeat the whole question back to them. Take all the time before you even start doing it. Repeat the question, describe what the inputs are, describe what the outputs are, and describe what the thing you're going to try and do, and then implement it. And then people usually, they said that's better than just, here's the problem, start typing and not speaking about it at all. They said, look, if you start talking about it and do these steps, that you'll get like 80% of the way there, because they're not really, they told us that it's a personality thing. So whether you get hired or not isn't just your tech skills. And they made it clear that you have to talk and let people hear your personality and how you thought process, even if it's wrong. So that's what it worked.
The answer of what to do is in the prompt, and you're just not understanding the prompt well enough. That's what I see a lot of engineers struggle with. But yeah, so
that's another perfect example of academia. It's like there's no real world example where I'm going to be given a riddle and then
Oh yeah. So tell me.
Well, I think it's kind of like a riddle.
This is kind of what I want to know. So with me, my connections at Dev Bootcamp were fantastic. I made a video about how hard it was for me to make real friends in my software career so far.
Yeah.
Really, it's been tough for me to make real friends for numerous reasons. But through my bootcamp, I actually have some.
Don't feel bad. You're not alone. And the whole society's been atomized. we're all living on the internet. The most important things are online. That's why we never have to leave our houses to have the most interesting, most intriguing, most creative, most shocking, most is just coming from our TVs and not other people. So don't beat yourself up.
Real friends that I've made and kept up with, and I've hung out with them and all these things. And that came a lot from being in person. Do you feel that you kind of missed out on a lot of connections from having that remote experience?
Without a doubt, yeah.
Yeah. So during the Rona, the hack reactor people, because I was living in a place that had people that was set up for people staying and doing this hack reactor thing. So after I got hired on, I still lived this place for a little while before I got my own place. Actually, I moved to Mexico, and there was another guy going through the cohort, and they went remote only while I was living in the house, and he was miserable. Like the people before that were all doing in-person stuff. They were very lively and fun and everything. And it wasn't just the Rona. I was like, he was just locked in his room all the time because he was living in this house. He came there for that purpose, and they didn't reduce the fees or anything. They just like made him do it remote. I'm like, what the hell? This makes no sense. So anyway, I hope that guy did well, but that Rona, man.
Now, I made some connections that have, I've sort of kept up with, sort of not. Like I'm gonna. You ever played Tabletop Simulator?
Tabletop? Yes. No, I don't think I have.
It's a game where you play tabletop games virtually.
Oh, that's pretty sick.
Okay.
Yeah, it is an awesome game. But one of the guys I went to the cohort with, we play Tabletop Simulator, play board games like once every month or two. And then there's the other guy who was my TA who recommended me for the first job. I keep up with him every now and then. But it was very difficult to make lasting connections because it was remote. And I think the only reason I made any connections is because I was pair programming with these people 10 hours.
Even in person, there's no guarantees. So these people go off in different directions. The Rona fucked a lot of people up, man. And these companies, like people, like a lot of them are just, like in my cohort, what, 3 are still developers? 2? Me and somebody else? Maybe I don't know, I haven't checked, but the last time I checked, they're all no GitHub additions, no videos, no updates, nothing on the LinkedIn, blank profile pictures. I'm like, okay.
Hours a day. You get to the point where like what their children's name is because you hear them in the background for so many hours.
Wow. Interesting. But so we kind of know what
person would have been easier.
Yeah, the remote thing is like that's just non-starter. To build lasting friendship? Oh, come on now.
Oh yeah. So we kind of know what it was like for me when I graduated. I really, this was late 2015. I really just had to build, projects with an Angular JS, and I was able to get my first front-end engineering job.
That was the heyday.
$100,000, like everyone said. It was only $60,000, and I had to move pretty much halfway across the country. I had to go to a startup to take it.
Yeah, it's these jobs, man. All these atomization process, IQ shredders.
Yeah, and after 10 months, they fired me. So.
Yeah, man, that's the standard, man. Tech industry is wicked. It used to be like super kind of like stable. Now it's just like the culture is very transactional and brutal. Like the fact that we've allowed companies to totally offshore and then not change their prices or anything like that, and then no services for people left over in these companies after the layoffs. No, just figure it out. Bye. Go be a plumber. Go learn to dig coal.
See, like at this point, I've met so many developers who have moved across the country for a job and then been fired within less than a year.
Right.
That at this point,
normal.
I don't know if I could trust a company. If a company,
no, you can't trust them. Hell no. Trust a company? Are you insane? You can trust your own company. Trust a company. Have you seen how they've treated developers? That were their bread and butter. Oh, we love our people. We're a family here. Facebook, we're kind of like a family.
If a company's like, Brian, come out to wherever. I had about 6 months ago, I had an interview with a company, and I did really well in the interview, and they were saying that they were fast tracking me, and it was a very high likelihood that I'd be hired. And this was at the beginning of the month, like the 5th of the month, and they were saying that they want every.
Yeah, these people. I think they should have some laws about saying shit like that without actually going through with it, or there's got to be some laws. There's going to be some. Well, I don't know, man. It seems like the government has been taken over by these corporations, so that maybe this is the law. Just, you fuck employees, just fuck Americans, screw them, take them over. It's an economic zone now. The United States is an economic zone. No culture, just no society, just everybody's transactional, flying around these jobs. No, you didn't work out. Oh well, get rid of you. Bye. See ya. Bye. You moved up, you planned your life, totally cut a new place, rent, all your utilities, moving halfway across the world. No, fuck you. I'm out. Oh, okay. These companies. Trust companies? Yeah, right.
Everybody moved to a small town in the middle of nowhere in Missouri by the end of the month. And they said explicitly there would be no financial help with associated moving costs, including.
Yeah, it's these companies, these people. You think you just get away with that and still have a society, still have a functioning society, a high trust culture when you're doing that kind of shit? U.S. is an economic zone. It's not a country. It's not a fucking society. It's a fucking extraction zone.
Including like breaking your lease agreement and everything like that. So at that point, I guess I was already the 5th of the month. I'm like, so you want me in Missouri in 15 days? And you haven't even offered me the job yet? You're expecting me to break and I didn't get hired. But
that's insane.
Dodge a bullet. These companies are insane. Is the company does the company still around? See, the only reason these companies were a lot more existing is because of ZERP. They were accessed as free money. When that free money dried up that they were counting on, everything else dried up. And then the Rona went down. Everybody's not at home anymore on the computer 24/7. So all the guys, I guess we overhired. We're gonna fire everybody. I'm like, oh well, see you, bye, good luck. Wow. And you wanna have a society based on this? Really? Interesting.
They had such a fire under them, and they communicated that to me, that if I wasn't so already pessimistic, distrusting, I might have started making motions to uproot my life to go to Missouri.
Good. You're smart. You should be pessimistic. These companies are crazy. They're absolutely out of their minds, and they've gotten away with this stuff. America's cooked.
Get hired in the end.
I couldn't even imagine that. Like, I had to move to Dallas. I couldn't imagine I moved here, and then with it, like, my start date never happens. They just never really bring me on. That's insane. So we know what it was like when I graduated.
Oh, man, I've had similar experience. Maybe I should talk about that sometime. These companies don't give a shit about you at all. That's why I like saying they're open for direct attack. Spot Hero, you're open for direct attack. 200 people to do parking spots? Oh no, you're open for direct attack. You hire me on and get rid of me after you onboard me because I told you in the beginning I live in Mexico and I'm probably doing remote work from Mexico. You said that was fine. And all of a sudden you find out after I've already been onboarded, you sent me the laptop and then, no, oh, you're in Mexico. Well, that's not allowed. I was like, what do you mean that's not allowed? You said it was allowed the whole time. I said that was one of the reasons why I was keeping going all the way through the thing. Oh, no, I'm going to change my mind. It's like, oh, wow. Severance? Nope. Oh, well, you didn't work here long enough for severance.
What it was like for you when you graduated.
Direct
Obviously,
attack.
you got
direct attack.
Your first job through a connection, but I'm sure you applied elsewhere. I would love to kind of hear about your experience after you graduated.
So I got that first job through the connection, yes. I never applied to those first jobs. We had like a capstone group project at the end of the 6-month course. Mm-hmm. And me and my team had just started that project when that previous TA posted that job. And apparently nobody else answered it. I answered the job. I was expecting to see 30 other people there from the cohort. Nobody else was there. No one else clicked on the link. And so I never.
Typical though, because here's the subtext of the boot camp is we'll hand you like a little bird. We'll feed you. Too much of the jobs come into my mouth from the spoon of the boot camp. It's like, no, that's not how it works.
I had to apply for that first job. But then when I got laid off from that job was actually the day after I signed this lease and moved to.
Well, you kind of applied. You showed up. So that's their application.
Austin, Texas. So
oh my God.
I arrived in Texas with no job. And then there was a few months, like maybe 2 months, where I was applying to 100 to 150 jobs a month during that time. And just getting nothing.
Those are rookie numbers from what I'm seeing. People are applying to 2,000 jobs a month now.
There's no jobs. They pull back and they're not hiring. So that's the stage of the industry. That's the phase we're in right now. And it will change. Right now, that's what it is.
It's nuts. Since I got laid off from Deloitte, it was probably over 1,000.
Now, I wonder if these 2,000, because I'm running the numbers, I'm like, are you just doing easy apply? Because that's like, you can do like 60 or 70 an hour, maybe 200 an hour. Is that what you're talking about? I did all the easy apply. Are you doing actual full front cover sheet, introductory message, look at their LinkedIn, see what they're about, try to connect, and then talk to them, and then trying to find a way to go past the application process, but you still got to do it officially, blah, blah, blah. Is that what you're doing? Or is that an easy apply? 1,000
applications. And
but the fact of the matter is, there's people are very, very, most companies are not hiring right now. And the ones that do hire, you're not going to get your 100K salary to support your place in a city. So what do you do then? Well, do remote work, or you can. Well, I'm not going to tell you what you can do. You already know what you can do.
I'm luckier than some people. I mean, I know that there's a lot of people in the industry not getting any interviews at all. So I am thankful that I got some interviews between, over the last 18 months since Deloitte. But it was always the tale of like, you're good, you're just not good enough.
So yeah, that's what I want to dive into. Why do you think you weren't good?
But they don't want to train. They don't want to upgrade. They don't want to spend time to help you get the next level. They just expect you to work 70 hours a week after work, 30 hours. So you're 40 hours at work and then 30 hours after work by nerding out on whatever platform they've adopted that's going through all the munging changes and breaking changes, and then having to be super into all that stuff. Yeah, that's where it's at now. The boot camp lied. The boot camp said you're not going to get baby food anymore. Well, baby food, baby bird. Yeah. Industry's rough, man. It's a contact sport.
Good enough.
I think that companies were no longer in a position where they saw the benefit of nurturing a developer's skills.
Correct, because they say, "Oh, look, we can just offshore it." That's what happened. They just say that same. We can get rid of all the people around here. Get all of these super employees locally, go them over to India or wherever, China or Japan or not Japan, probably Ukraine, which I've done. And yeah, you can avoid a lot of local heat.
I think, and this is speculation because I don't know what the market was like 20 years ago, but I think back
it was way different
in the day. Companies had this mindset that, well, we could take on less experienced developers, we could incubate their skills, and in a year or two, they will be not only substantially better at their job, but we would potentially get them for cheaper.
And that's what I remember when I started getting the software companies when I first got into the industry. That's what it was like.
Because we're not hiring a more experienced developer from day one. I think that was maybe the logic.
Interesting.
And once it got to a point,
that was that it worked because people were into it and they would stay at these companies and pump out product and be excited about it. Yeah, that was the thing.
Where these companies are getting 500 applications for 1 or 2 open positions.
Right.
I think that they look at somebody like me and they go, well, should we invest 6 to 12 months to get this guy as good as this other person who's good right now? Or do we just hire this other person and just eat the difference?
That's just because of the economics right now, where the Rona got people into stuff and they want to go back to do that. And then there's most of those people are actually not very good developers, but there's so many of them that want to go back and think they can get back in that it's overwhelming. So they're all pretty okay. They're mediocre to okay to acceptable, and they're personable and all that stuff. And there's just so many of them that 500 for one job is like, okay. First of all, there's something wrong with the economy. And second of all, this offshoring everything. No, that's not. Well, if we want to have a society, a country, if it's just an economic extraction zone, well, yeah, that's great.
Difference in their salary. And I think from their perspective, they're just like, screw it. We'll just eat the difference and we'll just hire the better guy from day one and pay him more.
Yep.
Interesting. How did you do?
Right, because they are on the razor's edge, right? They feel like they have to get, if they can pay to get somebody better as opposed to take the time to do it, because they think everything's going to happen tomorrow. They think of the game. Well, and they're also, they're trying to get the rounds of funding. They got to show their product off. They have to make progress. Honestly, a lot of these companies just shouldn't exist because they're trying to outsource and hire things that they should know themselves. And that's why I'm saying adventure-driven development is the only way out of this bullshit.
On coding, I know in your video when you talked about how many hours you spent, you said you got a B+ or something. Like you did really well in an Apple coding test. Want to walk me through when that was?
Yeah, that was probably about a year ago, maybe between a year and 6 months ago. And that was supposed to be the first round of many rounds, and that was one of those automated ones where they send you a link and you go to their platform and it generates 5 coding challenges. And if my memory serves, I got 88%. And then I never heard back from them because
that is just insane. I wonder if there was probably, maybe you're thinking that people got like a 95%, but I bet you there was hundreds of people that were brilliant just like you that got an 88%. And so it's like, okay, they all got the same score. Who's got the best credentials? Who went to the best university? Who has the best, experience at, named companies that everyone knows. So,
well, especially being a FAANG company, I bet they got enough applicants that they can filter for people who effectively got perfect scores, and they still had more people than they were willing to interview.
Yeah, for me, the only FAANG company to give me an offer was Amazon, and I didn't move forward with it. I moved forward with Walmart instead. I know it's less DC, and I know everyone's gonna say you're an idiot for doing that, but I had the best work-life balance ever there. So,
no, that's not a bad idea.
You can say all you want about TC. This isn't blind here. This is real life. That doesn't matter. Your work-life balance matters more, and it was the best job I've ever had. But
well, some people it works. That matters. Some people they want to get ahead and do something else. And the work-life balance stuff, man. If you're gonna be in business and entrepreneurship, there's a time when you got to crank, man. And it's not work-life balance stuff. And I know these young people. I get it. I want to play around too. And when I was younger, I wanted to play. That's why I took 10 years off and did something completely different. I wasn't dicking with tech and so I'm on work-life balance. I was like, I just went life. Like, and I feel lucky that I was able to do that. So, and I feel blessed that happened to me, and I was able to do that, to have that perspective. But I get it, man.
Remember when I was at
but in this downturn economy, the work-life balance thing is kind of not a thing, and you're gonna have to be serious until we get out of this thing. That you set yourself up for the next stage, because companies are built at these bottom parts. That's where because all the companies that get washed out, like just the business models weren't gonna make it. They get washed out, and then the ones that survive and are thriving will really thrive when the thing turns around. That's always the case.
The other FAANG companies, Google, I had a Google interview twice actually, and I got just destroyed. I guess you could call it graped. That's the socially acceptable word to call it, but I got pretty much graped by the second Google interview I had. It was 5 rounds, all remote, 5 like straight in a row. There's no breaks. There's maybe a 5-minute break in between, and by interview 3, and I think I did well in the first 2. Interview 3, I was so brain dead, I just muffed it, and I was just like, I'm done. That's over. And like those type of high stakes, and that's not what your job is. Your job's never like that. Right. Even at Google, your job's never going to be 5 hours.
Right. But this is not about you. That's not about you. Let's be real honest. If you're doing Google interviews, it's about them. Not about you, man.
Just straight as complex of a problem you could think of to try to test you. So it's crazy to me that, for you could do well, that 88% is well, but still, it's not just you doing well, because maybe I could have done well. I did well on some interviews, but there's hundreds of thousands of other people that do well. Not hundreds of thousands, maybe just a couple hundred that do well. And guess what?
No, hundreds of thousands.
They have a master's. Guess what? They, went to an Ivy League school. They have something. They have some connection. And
everybody works at the company.
Nepotism, if they have like family there, will get you in the company. Anything like that will get you. And that's why I always say to junior levels, that's the best way to crack it nowadays, is having a network. Because gone are my days where you're building projects and you're just, you send out maybe 20 resumes, and guess what? You're getting interviews. Like gone are.
Well, there was a time, a brief moment, when that was it was expected. We got away with it, but he thinks that that's the norm. It's like, no, man, it's always been this other thing, man. Especially these big companies. It's kind of always been like this. There was a brief moment when it wasn't, but the norm is no. We have major gates, and you have to give your soul to us if you want to survive. And if you don't have that attitude, we don't really have a use for you, because there's about 500 other guys that want to come through the door and sit in your seat and actually do the thing that we tell you exactly the way you want it, with no questions and no arguments.
What are those days?
Yeah. And gone are the days where it seems like, at least, where a company is allowing you to learn on the job. I think the most disappointing rejection I had was for this company that would write middleman software for the banking industry. Okay. And it was super niche, and the company was making crazy money, and they just desperately needed developers because the company was growing so fast, and they were picking up contracts from all these huge banks. And so there was a very clear and yet dishonest acknowledgement from the company that they would tell me this: we don't expect you to know any of this because it's such niche stuff. This is code that was written many years ago, and our job is to maintain and modify what is effectively legacy code. So all we want to know is that you're curious and hardworking and you're willing to learn. But all of that got thrown out the window, because when it comes time to actually to perform in the interviews, and that was, by the way, a 7-round interview. It was
get out of here. Wait, go over what the 7 rounds were.
So I can only remember a few of them. I know that one of them I didn't take because the guy who was performing the interview got me mixed up with a different candidate, and he repeated the interview that I had done the day before. And when I told him, actually, I just did this interview the day before, he was like, we'll just run with it and we'll do it again. That was so unprofessional.
Wait,
I was so angry.
You did the same interview twice?
Yeah, the same technical interview twice with 2 engineers from the company, because they messed up what I was like, which candidate they were supposed to meet at what time.
Wait, what was it?
I remember we had a interview where I was supposed to bubble chart a distributed system, and I'll even tell you how I failed, because this was like life-changing money, this job, and it was 100% remote, and I had a buddy who worked at the company who I met at Deloitte, and that's the only reason my resume got into their hands.
Wow.
And so
that is pretty normal, actually. The industry connections. That's probably the only reasons why you want to go deal with these corporation jobs, is trying to make connections, solid connections in these places, so you can move around. But man, even these companies, man, right now they are just not happy, and they know they got developers by the balls, and they're being kind of dicks about it. Let's be honest.
Did all 7 rounds, and at the end, I hounded them for feedback. I hounded them for a couple of weeks before they finally got back to me, and we went down the list. The distributed system interview, I successfully created a distributed system in a bubble chart, and my instruction was create a distributed system with any technology you like. And then when I did that, they marked me as a failure because I didn't provide a suite of technologies for each component of the solution.
Interesting.
Another part of the interview was they dropped me into an existing project that has a bug in it, and I'm supposed to find, fix the bug, and explain what it is. I found and fixed the bug, but I pissed off the interviewer while in the interview because he was getting frustrated that it was taking me a long time to navigate around the project. And then I forget what hotkey it was, but he was like, just use something to move to some file. And I was like, oh, okay. And I moved that file. And then when I asked him for feedback, that's the reason I failed. Because the interviewer was upset that I didn't know the hotkeys for navigating the file structure.
Look, man, the reason why you failed is because they didn't like you. That's the reason. And you may have given them a little attitude when he gave you a suggestion while being a dick, because they kind of want to be able to like treat people or see how people react by being a dick. So that's the reason why it wasn't this other thing. And they can't be honest about that, right? They say, I don't like you. I don't like how you I don't like how you listened. I don't like what you did. I don't like the way you look, son. That's most of these interviews anyway. They know within 15 seconds, 12 seconds, 5 seconds from when you open your mouth, but they've decided whether they're gonna be for you or against you. Like this dude, so it's like you're crap shooting the whole time for these companies. And in the end they don't give a fuck.
That's just how much when you say it was life-changing money, how it was remote, it was life-changing money, what were you expecting if you were to have got this?
On the low end, it would have been like 140, 150. On the high end, like 180. But the company was giving apparently extremely generous equity deals as well.
Yeah, and that's where all the money is really. And these is like RSUs and equity deals. Was it a public company?
It wasn't, no. But it sounded like everyone at the company expected it to go public, and so they would be able to exercise their options and make a lot of money. And so, and it was like I said, it was 100% remote, and it really interested me that it was so niche that I can't remember exactly what their function was. It was something along the lines of like, the really big banks have to communicate with the small banks, and there's some super niche software that like JP Morgan uses to communicate with like the small town credit union. Yeah. And they write and maintain that software.
Yeah, I can imagine the amount of security and all these things you have to do to be in compliance with the banking. So I could see that being a pretty well-paid job.
Yeah, yeah. And it felt secure. You know what I mean? More secure.
I know what you mean. Yeah. Definitely, man. Cool. So let's get some final points here about boot camps. Brian, it was great to hear just kind of about your experience, but give me like a final verdict. What are you saying?
I wanted you to expand on something because you said something earlier. You mentioned that you had a CS background and then you went into the boot camp. That was one of the most fascinating experiences for me in the boot camp. Like 20% of the people in the boot camp had CS degrees, but they came into the boot camp complaining that the boot camp didn't teach them how anything about web dev. And now all these jobs want web dev. So they felt like they were shit out of luck, So how do you feel about that? Do you feel like the university maybe was behind the times, teaching you outdated
Totally. Oh my God, it's terrible
stuff that wasn't necessarily valuable to the market?
Yeah, great question. I'll say that I might have been the only one at Dev Bootcamp, or maybe one other person. I don't really know how many people when I was there actually had the CS degree as well. I think back then it was more switch your career. This is all you need, and people believed it because maybe back then you could find a job with that being all you needed. Seriously, nowadays.
Yeah, it was. There was a brief moment, a brief shining moment in the sun, and everyone's like, "Can it be like that again?" And no, it'll be different. It's not gonna be like that again.
Not the case, but really, that's all you need.
Not anytime soon. Who knows if it'll ever be? There won't be that. It'll be something else.
So I would say back then a lot of people didn't have the CS degree. It was very, very rare at the time. And sorry, I was just thinking about so much with bootcamp. What was your second part of the question? I totally apologize.
Do you feel like the university was, this is a strong phrase, but maybe a waste of time and money?
The university CS degree?
Yeah. When to get out of the university and immediately realize, well, almost all the jobs want you to do web dev, and I didn't learn any web dev. Well, what the fuck did I do for the last 4 years?
Oh yeah, man. I mean, you know what technology we learned at Dev Bootcamp? We learned Ruby on Rails. I have never touched Ruby on Rails since this bootcamp. So imagine
that was why the bootcamp started, because it wasn't to learn Ruby on Rails or web dev. It was people wanted to build applications for the web. And before Ruby, it was nearly impossible to do the backends for these things because they're all in Perl and weird shit. I was like, what the hell? Are you writing in C from scratch? What the fuck? You have to learn C now? And then some Ruby came along, and it was very JavaScript-like, Lisp-like language. Very easy to like get up and going. It didn't run very fast. Who gave a shit? You're standing up these web dev services, and you got clients, you got customers. So that was what it was. Well, I want to learn Ruby. It's like, no. I want to learn web dev. It's like, no. People want to stand up these services so they could get paid. They didn't really care about the technology. They didn't care about any of that stuff. They just want to stand up these services. And then after that, it became, I want to get into business because all these services came up, all these companies came up. And now they want more developers to come in and help. And then that became the job thing. So first wave was like, I want to do these web services so I can get fucking rich and get the company going. And then the second wave was like getting jobs at those places that had just done that.
Bulk of your bootcamp is Ruby on Rails and a little portion is JavaScript. So we didn't have like the great, Node, React,
back end, front end.
Yeah, your tech stack you had been fantastic to, learn something like that, learn, AngularJS at the time. I would say, yes, a lot of things with the CS degree don't help you in your day-to-day dev work. That's very obvious.
Correct.
But
you have to know the underknowledge. But there comes a thing that the day-to-day, you'll hit an issue. It's like, without knowing how the thing actually works underneath, which in my class, my course, How to Program from the Ground Up, which I have a link below, free. The whole thing's free. I go into it that you have to know how the thing works underneath to see why we're doing these things above, and that there comes a time when you got to know that shit, because it's like you won't be able to figure it out if you feel stuck.
You will learn a lot about
you will be stuck.
Science, and again, it helps with lead coding. Understanding math and discrete mathematics helps with lead coding. Yes. And I'll say this: the biggest reason is you're in the club. You have an alumni network of CS degrees, and a lot of people, I mean, curmudgeons that are hiring you, that's what they're going to look for. You have a CS degree to sit on at some type.
Maybe lately, just as another factor, but if you have the skill set already and doing the thing that they want to do, and you understand these topics already, the degree isn't as crucial. I don't think it's as big as, because I didn't have a degree for a long time. I eventually got it one by mail just to finish it up, but I didn't have a degree for the longest time.
The badge of honor, essentially saying,
I was working in the industry, doing all kinds of companies, working at pushing product out, shipping stuff, making it happen.
I went to university. I got this degree. It doesn't matter if the degree didn't teach me anything. It's just kind of putting me in a place for you to think I know everything. Like, oh, this guy's a degree, probably knows everything. He's ready to come on board. This is the candidate I prefer over someone else. And
I've met a lot of computer science people who could not program out a paper bag, so that's no guarantee.
Maybe he has an unconventional route. So the network from the university I went to has been huge. Really, throughout my whole professional career, it's been the biggest thing for me to not only get into more interviews, but as an entrepreneur now, I'm being able to meet new businesses, meet new clients from that. So the value in the CS degree, again, it's kind of like what you said for the bootcamp. It is the network that you build. And the CS degree, again, I wish I went to a more prestigious computer science university, but again, there's still an alumni network, and that really helped me. So it's really the same as the bootcamp. That's cool. It's the networking that really is the big part.
I haven't had the same experience, but
it's the self-study that keeps you in the degree and makes you good, and it's those that get you into the network to give you the opportunity to demonstrate your skills.
Would you say that, so your bootcamp sounded pretty intense? You said it was 8 hours a day?
Yeah. In person.
Mine was 10 or 11. It was gnarly. Super fun, though.
Would you say that CS...
For me, for other people, it was hell. But for me, it was fun. And I tried to make it fun for people on my team, but a lot of them were just like, I just want to get through this. I'm going to get paid. I'm so broke. All right, I get it.
These are generally substantially less intense, less of a grind, because, I obviously got lucky, but in hindsight, it took me 5...
Yeah, you got lucky. You're one of the lucky ones, and I'm glad you recognize that.
5.5 months to break into the industry. If I spent 4 years in a degree and then it took me 5.5 months to get into the industry, it would feel like 4 years is a long time.
No, the bootcamp is way more intensive than a degree. Because at least
it's intensive, but doing a long thing, if you're having no family around in a strange city and you have to do a job at the same time, it's a long time, man. If you have your family and stuff around, you're living at home, whatever, that's easy time. So, but at the time of the boot camp, it's pretty intensive. But I don't know. I thought it was. I don't know. I liked it, even if it didn't give everybody there what they wanted. I got what I wanted. I needed out of it, which I kind of knew what I needed and how it would work. So.
At least my experience was, I was in a fraternity in college. I was going to parties. I was doing all that while managing.
Yeah, see, you're not really, you're goofing off. You're doing something else.
Yes, degree. So, no, the bootcamp is way more intensive. And you would think it being so much.
There's no partying. There's no partying at the bootcamp. Fuck no. Your partying was sleeping, taking a nap.
Intensive that you are progressing so much more. But there's just so much to learn, so much to understand.
True.
It's really almost endless. The amount of concepts, and again, there's new technology popping up everywhere. The amount of things you can learn within computer science, pro coding in general it's unfathomable because there's new stuff built every day.
You have to that's why you have to focus in on what you want to do with this thing. And you have to sample around, that's important, but what are you trying to do with this tool set? Because it's super deep.
And existing stuff changes every day. The teams managing all these different frameworks and languages, they're constantly evolving them. So this is some of the most perishable knowledge you can possibly gain.
Correct.
It's like a tomato.
Do you think, here's a great question. I was thinking
the actual tools. Now the techniques, the concepts, they are immortal. But the tool set is constantly changing. Yeah. And if you're going to be in computers, this has been that way since I started. It's been a completely evolution of the hardware, evolution of the architectures of the hardware, evolution of the languages, what the languages can do, how they're interrelated. Yeah, all the whole thing's been changed. But the conceptual models, constant, immortal.
Do you think we could have became doctors kind of with our work ethic? You spending so much time in, I probably spent a quite similar amount of time, probably not as quickly as you did in that time span, but over the years, I probably spent as much time. Do you think becoming a doctor would have been an easier route?
No.
So it's funny.
My mom's a nurse, so I've been around the medical stuff. No. Not a doctor. Not the same thing. I know it's a profession, but it's definitely different. Your doctors diagnosing and looking stuff up and prescribing meds. With computers, we're when you're working on somebody else's problem, you're in a whole different headspace. There's problem space, solutions. It's crazy. You have to be super creative. There's no end result. 100%. There's no cured patient. Is the product ships? Does it bug you or not? Is it too big to ship? It's everything has bugs. It's like, okay, see,
I think
you're not a doctor.
There are some things that don't speak to me.
Totally
right? So I've known people before who went into law or medicine, and I would say like what they do doesn't speak to me, but I've seen how hard they work, and I know that they're not working any harder than I am. So I think if we were willing to grind like this on something else, I think there's almost nothing that we couldn't have done.
I feel the same way.
Yeah, it's true. It's just what juices you. And if you have that ability and the competency and the willingness, yeah, you can put that will towards anything. Literally anything. And you'll bump up against your limitations. You either exceed them or you succumb to them.
You know, now with the market, the job insecurity, basically you're competing against the whole world at this point. It almost feels like, you know, you think of, oh, what if I became a doctor, I became a lawyer? You know, it's probably similar, the amount of studying you'd have to do to kind
Lawyer's over.
Break in. Just an interesting thought I've always had is, you know, the amount of time we've spent, how hard would it have been to break into other industries? I mean, I guess
doctors on the road is going to be we're going to have humans, of course. We're going to have the lawyers, we're going to have a human somewhere, but they're not really going to do all the hard pushing. They still understand the concepts, but the hard pushing, no, doctors and lawyers, their jobs are in trouble. Software engineers, we're still going to be needed because we're going to have to direct the machines, just like the doctors are still going to be needed because they're going to have to curate the machines, and lawyers are still going to have to curate the machines output. We still have to curate it, so there's human involvement that's not going to go away. You know, trying to product market fit is all human stuff.
Obviously, we wouldn't get paid as much as quickly. You know, we would have to have delayed our gratification of earning a salary that was high into way later in life. But, you know, now that we're in our 30s, it's kind of like, oh.
Way? No, it's just way. It's not that far.
We would have been there by now.
But it is a long time when you're eating peanut butter sandwiches 10 years in medical school. Ugh, God damn, dude. Does that have to be that long, really?
And you don't have the benefit of remote.
That is true, yeah.
Invaluable. It's
right, being remote is also pretty choice. Being anywhere on the planet, that's a pretty choice. But again, are these companies supporting that, or is it just a brief moment where they allowed it to happen?
It can be put on working remote. And
wow, that's a strong statement there. Tell me more about why you think remote's so good, because I like it. I'm remote, but there's some things I don't like about it.
So, first of all, I think this can be a stressful job, and nowhere am I more relaxed than at home. Secondly, I have only gone in and worked in an office a couple of times in my life, and it's never once in my life been a good work environment unless you have a job which has sort of questionable benefit. Right? If you're like in middle management or HR, or if you're like on a sales team and you spend a large part of the day bantering, then it's great. You can be in the office, hanging by the water cooler and shooting the shit with people. But when your job is to put your head down and grind, when your job is to stare at code all day, I don't see how being in an office could benefit me. I think
there's moments. Okay, so there's phases of the project, right? There's phases of the project where you have to be interactive and talking and coordinating and doing, and then there's other phases where you want to be totally silent and dark and not be touched and left alone, and only come up when we've completed the thing that you're trying to do without being interrupted. And that is kind of a unique thing with software development. Is there's two phases of it, where one's super extroverted and one's super introverted, and it takes a special kind of person to navigate those. And I've worked in offices where were super fun. I've also worked in offices where there were areas where you were not allowed to have loud fun, which is the developer area usually. But outside the developer area, which developers would go meet outside the area, you're allowed to be louder. But inside the developer area is always hush. So that was kind of a known thing. It wasn't open plans back then when I was working in these offices. It was closed. You had your own office, even if there may not have been a door. There was still walls around where you could close off stuff and not be interrupted. But it depends on the environment you've been in. Every office is different, and the middle managers, all of them never understand this. Well, some of them did back then. They did. But these modern ones are like, no, we are collaborating, open office plans like that. That's great for you guys, but not for developers. And we're actually trying to write code. That's super actually counterproductive, and it's just going to eventually piss us off and definitely make us want to leave.
Only hurt me. We had days when we were required to go into the office for Deloitte. I don't remember a single one of those days being productive. I thought the office was
that's the reason is to show your face. The reason is not for you to be there to be productive. We've already discovered about Deloitte they're not about production. He's the one that showed me 9 bosses. You got 9 bosses, sir. Yeah. So Deloitte was not about productivity. Deloitte was about showing your people arrayed around you, and feeling really important because we're Deloitte.
The most uncomfortable, unproductive places I've ever been in my entire life, and it was filled with people who were doing everything in their power to not be productive. Right. All it would take was to glance at somebody, and they'd want to take you aside and waste an hour of your time telling you about their dog. I'm sorry, I don't care about your dog. I'm here to do this job.
Because that's the culture. Because what they're actually doing isn't really for what they're being paid. And really, it's more like a patronage network where these are courtesans, not courtesans. They're like members of the royal palace court. It's distributed, of course, but they pick people who they like, but they're not really doing anything productive. There's like 10% of the team doing something productive, but most of the people are there just to make it seem like they're being a big deal. That's what's going on. It's kind of old practice, feudal lords and all that stuff.
Interesting. I found, I guess I've been remote even before COVID. I was remote in some positions, but the in-person experiences I've had, it always felt so hard to me to make real friends in computer science. Like, yeah, you'd have service level conversations. Yeah, you'd have people talking water cooler talk. But, a big problem was I feel like I wasted so many years not socializing. And I see, like, my wife's a great example. She has tons of friends she met throughout her years working in industrial real estate. And they all hang out. And, us mostly.
That's different industry. Let's be real honest. Like, the whole computer nerd isolated thing, that's definitely a thing. And most of those people, they have gotten so good at that, be rewarded for that, they feel like they don't need to become social. And that's going to become apparent here in a minute. Like, as these companies lose to smaller adventure-driven companies, lose slices of the market to people who are taking all these things into consideration.
Being remote, us, even when we're in person, most devs are antisocial. Most devs are, if they're visa workers, they have different cultures, different backgrounds. It's really an antisocial career to a point. And since starting YouTube, it's become infinitely more social for me. And it's one of the greatest experiences I've ever had so far.
Yeah, this is the new thing. Is like, this is how you find your people, is by putting your face on YouTube and saying ridiculous shit and talking about this stuff. That's how you learn. That's how it is now. This is the culture we live in. So people have to know you before they know you. And it's from the media, the social media. And you kind of have to put yourself out there and show yourself that you understand these dynamics and want to do something different.
Did you feel isolated in a way when you were remote?
So I should check my own proclivities here, because I'm a very solitude focused person. I love being alone. I never feel alone.
I do too. I've always enjoyed it since I was a little kid. I like other people, but I definitely love my solitude.
I also have maybe not a big social network by some people's standards, but I have a social network that I'm very satisfied with, and I have very satisfying relationships, and I live in an exciting place. I live on 6th Street in Austin, so I can walk out of my house.
I used to live in Austin for about 20 years, so like living on 6th Street.
And walk for 5 or 10 minutes and be surrounded by bars and nightclubs and exciting people and people to meet. And so the only thing, the isolation
not on 6th Street, you bunch of alcoholics. No,
was just the sheer amount of hours indoors. Ironically, I mean, if I wasn't working a software job, I'd probably spend a similar amount of hours indoors. But like, when I first got laid off from Deloitte, here's a good example. I went back into food service briefly. So I went down 6th Street, I found a pizzeria, I got a job at the pizzeria. And it was the most unbelievable relief to just hang around people and to never have to look at a computer and to
which is why, like, when I sold that company, software company, I went to do massage. I just started chair massage and got into yoga and Thai massage yoga. Yeah, man, being around people is super fun. We're super, so that's why, like, I know that I've got these two natures of this, like, very social thing, but also technical thing. I need to have both of it. That's why, like, adventure driven development is like the key thing. That the times I've been the most happy has been that stuff.
To just be chatting with people all day,
or doing the massage work. I love that stuff too. It's fucking badass, man. Thai massage is amazing.
And I'm on 6th Street, so like the place is filled with crazy characters, and
it's almost like that's natural to do. It's like we're naturally. It's unnatural for us to look at a street all day. It's natural for us to be in a social position all day and meeting and chatting with new people.
It is. And so I would say the one drawback about working remote is if you're not careful, you can sort of insulate yourself. And I definitely did that for the first 3 years I was in Austin. And it wasn't until I lost my job at Deloitte, and then I looked around and I'm like, I don't know anything about the city, because even though I've been here for a couple of years, I spent that time locked up in my apartment staring.
That's most people now. Fuck.
At a computer screen. And
it's just crazy. Yeah, it's like you don't even live in your own city.
No, exactly. Yeah, you end up living through the window. Staring out the window. It looks like a nice day today.
Oh my god, yeah.
But
That is the bug man existence, man. If you don't look out, it turns into that with these jobs, man.
Love remote. I love it because even when I'm really stressed, I know that some people really struggle to separate work from home balance. I don't. In my mind, it's really easy to compartmentalize. Like, this is my work desk. This is my work computer. When I'm not sitting at this desk, I'm not at work. It's really easy for my brain to
do that. And I've learned to do that from having my own company for 7 years and running it and doing all the software and stuff. Yeah, I can definitely switch out. Switch out. It does have to have a special space to switch in and switch out. Yeah, I'm pretty good at that.
I'm also a big proponent of digital segregation. I think that anyone who can afford it, you should buy a separate computer for the different things in your life. A separate computer and a separate desk for your work, a separate computer and desk for personal stuff. I do YouTube. I have a separate computer. This desk that I'm on right now is just for YouTube related stuff. I'm never sitting at this desk unless I'm filming a YouTube video.
Yeah, this desk is doing YouTube video and coding.
That's incredible. I'm going to implement that myself in a way. I just feel like I have everything here. Like, I have one desk. That's like,
I can do it mentally too now. It's not as critical.
Here I'm filming YouTube. I'm just chilling, watching YouTube videos, or I'm working, I'm coding, I'm doing. I think the separation of like all these different tasks that you're supposed to do is just such a great way to put you in the right mindset. You know, like when you're at this, it's like, oh, yes. I'm working. I'm not wasting time, because that's the thing. When I'm at this desk, it's like, oh, I could be working or I could be wasting time doing God knows what. You know, watching videos, scrolling through social media, whatever.
Exactly. Like in a perfect, I'm in a relatively small apartment, so I can't do this. But in a perfect world, I would have, because right now I have 4 different computers that all have a primary focus. One computer is just for my personal life. One computer is a really old gaming computer I have. One computer is for YouTube, which is this one, and one computer is for coding, which is in my office. And it's that segregation is also fantastic in terms of digital security. You know, you have different passwords for everything. Everything has its own hard drive that it's on. It's really easy to keep things organized. And you don't have to worry about like things overlapping.
Yeah.
Everything. I even have different email addresses for everything. But like you said, your brain knows. My brain knows that when I sit on this computer, there's nothing else I can do on this computer other than film a YouTube video.
That's cool.
Like, there is.
Yeah,
that's a good tip. That's a good tip.
It's not possible to be distracted. There's nothing else I can do here. I'm either sitting here and twiddling my thumbs, or I'm making a video.
That's not a bad tip.
Cool, man. All right, so unfortunately, I got to kind of start wrapping this up. Man, it was so great talking to you. We should do this.
Yeah, it was great talking to him. I'll let you finish up the rest of that video. So I get to share my little experience and compare and contrast with those guys. And yeah, give me a like and subscribe, and I'll talk to you soon.